What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Nate Echoes podcast. Man, this podcast started a while back where it was just a way for me to get the thoughts out of my mind. I always retain things a little bit better whenever I can apply them in my life. And so whether it's a book I'm reading or a podcast I listen to, or a life experience that happened, this is just a way for me to echo what I've heard back in a different way for you guys to hear as well. It's been fun. Thank you guys so much for the support. Man, be sure to leave a like or comment or share it if this is helpful to somebody or anybody. But I'm excited and blessed to be able to do this. So let's get started. Today is episode 028, Sickness or Disease. So we're in our back to school season, and one of my sons got sick the other day, right? He got up in the middle of the night, started throwing up, and he's just like, oh my goodness, I can't go to school. Oh my goodness, I feel terrible. Oh my goodness, my stomach, and just doing this whole thing. And because it is back to school season, after he threw up, he went back to bed, and the next morning, my wife and I, we had the conversation, do we send him to school, right? And I said, listen, I guarantee you that this kid just threw up because we had a birthday party the day before and he ate an entire peach cobbler, I think. Like, he had ice cream, he had all of the sweets, and his stomach was just not having it. So that was the reason that he threw up. Well, he very, very much agreed to disagree, and he's like, no, I'm sick. I can't do it. I can't go into school. And this interaction with him really got me to thinking about what the difference is between a sickness and a disease, right? Think about it. Like, if you had to say it right now without looking it up on Google, like, what would the difference be between a sickness and a disease? Before I started really looking into this a little bit, I would always say, well, a sickness is more severe, or a disease is more severe than a sickness, right? And so I did some research, and I found out some things that I didn't know, but it kind of made sense, right? Got me thinking that, a disease is a pathological process, deviation from a biological norm, right? That's a lot of big words, but basically a disease requires treatment in order to get better. Whereas a sickness, while it still is a health condition, while there still are symptoms of it, a sickness is far less urgent, right? It doesn't necessarily require a medication or anything in order to get better. Sometimes you can take some medication and it'll help the symptoms a little bit, but a sickness is something that comes and goes and it passes through, right? And a sickness can be caused by a variety of things, whether it's just the common flu or being around somebody who's sick or something you ate or something you drank. This sickness is kind of something that it makes you feel terrible, right? But it's this season. It has a shelf life to where even if you do nothing, you're going to get better, right? And that disease is very different. The main difference between that sickness and the disease is the treatment, is the order on how you can get better. While sickness you can get better, disease it is a trip down. It is against the norm. And so as I started thinking about this while envisioning my son vomiting in the restroom for a while, it got me thinking to a lot of the things in our life, a lot of the things in my life that maybe I have misdiagnosed, right? Have you ever misdiagnosed something? Whenever I was younger, my sister, she got pulled down by the dog on the ice, and she's like, Mom, my arm hurts, and my mom didn't take her to the ER for the longest time, and finally she's like, I'll prove it to you, your arm's not broken, and it was broken, right? These things that you have misdiagnosed in your life, and they could be a variety of things, but my question that I want to ask us today, and the question that I've been thinking about it, is, are those things a temporary symptom, right? To where if left untreated, everything will return, or are they a disease? Is it something that has changed, that has diverted from the biological or from the norm that you're supposed to be experiencing? As I started really thinking about this and sorting out my life and in my roles as a father and as a husband and as a community member and as a pastor and as all of these different things, there's always things that come up in my life, these symptoms that come up in my life that I don't like, right? Like my kid throwing up in the restroom, right? It's something that comes up and it's like, this is different. This this hits differently. And I wonder, is it something that is really important, or is it something that's not important? Because that's the real key, right? A disease, man, it's going to only get worse if it's not treated, whereas a sickness, if you leave it untreated, it's going to continue to get better, right? And how many times in my life have I experienced an outcome, right? Experienced something that's going on in my life that I attributed to a sickness when it was really a disease. When it was really something that I really needed help with. When it was really something that impacted more than just me, right? I was reading a book by Andy Stanley called Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets, and he says this: self-leadership is the greatest leadership challenge any of us face. But self-leadership is a critical component of our success in every area of our life. You'll never be a leader worth following if you don't lead yourself well. And while that's apparent, if you have an official organizational leadership role, it should equally be apparent if you are a parent. And as I read that, end quote, sorry. But as I read that, I was like, man, how many times have I relied on myself to diagnose myself? Like, I'll see something and be like, oh, that's just the stress, right? Oh, that's just a temporary setback. Oh, it's because I was hanging around with this. Oh, I'm being extra critical. Oh, I'm not being happy. Oh, I'm being lazy. Oh, there are these. I just seem to be more angry or more tired or more lackadaisical or not motivated. Or whatever it is. Maybe I seem to be shorter with my kids or my spouse. Maybe I've just I've let the lawn go way too long, longer than I normally like to. And if you think back, those are all just symptoms of what we're experiencing. But the question I need to ask myself now is that a sickness or is that a disease? I think it can easily be attributed to a sickness. Oh, well, you had a really busy weekend. You ate a lot of sweets. No wonder you're acting this way. Oh, you were just hanging around some people. Oh, your stress level is up because the stress of your job is up or the stress of the diagnosis is up, right? But how many times do I not lead myself well and allow myself to be diagnosed for what might really be the problem? Because if I don't treat a disease as soon as possible, it's only going to continue to get worse. And I've been in those seasons where I don't treat a disease because I think it's a sickness, and it just continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse as I go along. It doesn't get better. It's a diversion from the norm, from what should be happening, and I need, whether it's extra rest or extra time in prayer or extra support from my family or whatever it is, I need to receive that treatment. And just like my son, I think that self-leadership a lot of times really has a tendency to come from the heart, what I really want. See, my son just didn't want to go to school. It was the first few weeks of school. He just didn't want to go to school the next day, right? And so he was able to use any excuse to say, oh, I'm really sick. I think that's the other thing that we can really do as well, is we can treat a simple sickness as a disease and say, well, I need more help than what I have. I need medication. I need other people to step in. I need all of these things because I can't handle it on my own. And we end up using it as an excuse to miss or misbehave or act differently or lash out in our life or not do something or stay home during church or whatever the thing might be. There are so many of those things that we end up misdiagnosing. But if we're going to be good leaders, if we're going to be good parents, if we're going to be good coworkers, if we're going to be good bosses or good teachers or whatever it is, we have to be better at diagnosing a sickness and a disease. What is something that needs treated and what is something that will pass? How we not feel guilty for something that we didn't do whenever a rest is needed, or how we need to seek more help and more counseling or more understanding when it's something that needs more, right? So who are the people that you can get diagnosed from? Right? If we're really working on self-leadership, if we're really going to work on being the best version of ourselves for our family, for our loved ones, for our faith, for our community, for our jobs, whatever it is, if we really want to do the best, this is what Andy Stanley was saying in that quote, we have to be self-leaders. And so what happens whenever you can't trust yourself to make that decision sometimes? Who are the people in your life that you can get diagnosed from? Who are the people in your life that can tell you when your symptoms of bitterness or anger or frustration or stress or depression or laziness or just a sickness because of something that you've been experiencing that maybe you didn't connect the links or connect the dots to? Or they can say, this has been going on longer. You should really get this checked out. This is now something that's diverted from your norm, diverted from your goals. It has pushed you away from where you want to be going. Maybe it's time to seek some real help because it might be a disease rather than a sickness. So here are a few questions that I've been thinking of, and I want you, if you've been going through that season in life, or maybe your kids are, or maybe somebody that you know is, here are 3 simple questions that you can ask to discover whether it's a sickness or a disease in your life, whether it needs treated or whether it's the season that you can just let it go and you will return back to normal. And the first one is, what are the symptoms that you don't like? Right? I think that's the very first thing. What are the symptoms that you don't like? Is it the short fuse? Is it extra tired? Is it actually a physical illness, right? Is it something that's really going on in your life, but it's the symptom that you don't like, right? What are those symptoms? And there might be more than one, but I'd encourage you to be honest with that. Ask yourself, what are these symptoms? Or maybe, if you're bold enough, ask your spouse. What are the symptoms that you're seeing in my life? Maybe it's scrolling too much. Maybe it's not paying enough attention. Maybe it's not being present even when you're present. Maybe it's always being sleepy or always being tired or not doing the dishes. Like whatever the thing is, maybe ask somebody else, but figure out what those symptoms are in your life because that's the first step to diagnosing any issue. The second one is, how long have those symptoms been hanging around? Did you just have a crazy week that you were traveling last week and now you just need 2 or 3 extra days to decompress at the end of the week? Have they been going on for a short period of time? Is there something that makes sense that they could be connected to? Or is this something that, again, self-leadership, we like to think has only been a real short time, but it's really been the last 4 months, or it's really been the last year? That time works differently in our minds, and as we lead ourselves, we want to make sure we're leading ourselves well. So being honest about how long these symptoms have been hanging around, just like if you were to go to a doctor and say, I've got some irritation on my skin. Were you just in poison ivy yesterday? Yeah. Or, no, this has been going on for 3 years. Those kinds of things can really help bring it to light. Is this anger something that I'm just recently struggling with, or is it something that's, I hate to admit it, but it's really been plaguing me for a while? And the third one is it possible you've been treating a symptom with a disease treatment or a sickness with a disease treatment? Is it possible that you've got them mixed up, just saying, it'll go away soon. It's here to stay. This is part of who I am now, and I'm just going to learn to live with it. Is it possible that you have flipped how those two things go? And then the fourth question, I said 3 questions, there's 4, I'm sorry. But then the fourth question I want you to think about is, do you really want to get better? Can you really trust yourself to really want to get better? Because I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of the things in my life, oh man, it'd just be easier if it was a disease and it was out of my control and I had no control over it. Or if it was a sickness and this just was going to pass and I didn't have to do any of the hard work. I didn't have to take any of the medications. I didn't have to do any of the therapy in order to get past this season. So being honest with yourself about those 4 things, I think is going to be a huge help for who we are and how we continue to develop as leaders. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Whether you're on Spotify or iTunes or YouTube, wherever you are, thanks so much. I'd love it if you hit that like button, got notified whenever I drop a new episode. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. It's a good day for a good day. Let's make it great.